A pleasant morning to all. I am here once again as your facilitator to discuss on the RPMS PPST Domain 4, which is Curriculum and Planning. So based on the RPMS manual for teachers and school heads, Domain 4 addresses teachers' knowledge and interaction with the national and local curriculum requirements. This domain encompasses their ability to translate curriculum content into learning activities that are relevant to learners and based on the principles of effective teaching and learning. It expects teachers to apply their professional knowledge to plan and design individually or in collaboration with colleagues, well-structured and sequenced lessons. These lesson sequences and associated learning programs should be contextually relevant, responsive to learners' needs, and incorporate a range of teaching and learning resources. This domain expects teachers to communicate learning goals to support learner participation, understanding, and achievement. Domain 4 includes 5 strands, and the indicators for the different career stages are cited. However, in our session, I will only limit the indicators for the proficient teachers. So the first strand under Domain 4 is 4.1, Planning and Management of Teaching and Learning Processes. And the indicator under this is 4.1.2, Plan, Manage, and Implement developmentally sequenced teaching and learning processes to meet curriculum requirements and varied teaching context. The second strand is 4.2, Learning Outcomes Aligned with Learning Competency. And the indicator for the proficient teachers is that 4.2.2, Set achievable and appropriate learning outcomes that are aligned with learning competencies. The third strand is relevance and responsiveness of learning programs. And the specified indicator is that adopt and implement learning programs that ensure relevance and responsiveness to the needs of all learners. The fourth strand is professional collaboration to enrich teaching practice, and its indicator is participate in collegial discussions that use teacher and learner feedback to enrich teaching practice. And the fifth and last strand is the teaching and learning resources, including ICT, which the indicator is select, develop, organize, and use appropriate teaching and learning resources, including ICT, to address learning goals. Among these 5 indicators, 2 are classroom observables, namely Indicator 4.1.2 and Indicator 4.5.2. However, during pandemic, only Indicator 4.5.2 was retained to be classroom observable. Apart from the fact that the indicator is significant, whether in traditional or distance learning setup, I just recently attended a webinar about this, so I will take this opportunity to share to all of you comprehensively what I learned, so I will focus on this topic. Strand 4.5, Teaching and Learning Resources including ICT, and the indicator is select, develop, organize, and use appropriate teaching and learning resources, including ICT, to address learning goals. Here are the session objectives. First, define and understand the key concepts of teaching and learning resources. Second, recall the types of teaching and learning resources and their applicability in different subject areas. And lastly, gain skill to select, develop, organize, and use appropriate teaching and learning resources, including ICT, to address learning goals. Are you ready to learn and participate? Let's see your answers. Please chat Y in the chat box if you are ready and N if you are not yet ready. So thank you for the active participants who are already keying their answers. Since majority said they are ready, let's have the game time. So the game time focuses on the key concepts. We have 3. 1. Learning goals. 2. Teaching and learning resources. And 3 is the inclusion of ICT. I will pause the definition. All you have to do is to key in the chat box number 1, 2, or 3 to tell which concept is being described. Let's begin. So number 1, these are broad statements of learning outcomes which include content and performance standards. 1, 2, or 3. So the correct answer is 1. This refers to learning goals. Let's move on to the second concept or key concept. These refer to resources used in the teaching and learning process, such as teaching resources or learning resources. 1, 2, or 3. The answer is 2. Teaching and learning resources. And let's move on to the third one. This refers to the integration of ICT in the teaching and learning process. This also includes digital resources downloaded from the LRMDS portal, YouTube, and others. So wala na siguro magkakamali dito. The correct answer is 3. Inclusion of ICT. So that's the end of our game. Thank you po sa mga nag-participate sa ating simple game. Moving on, let us reflect on our current teacher practices on the selection, development, organization, and utilization of the teaching and learning resources. As proficient or highly proficient teachers, we need to have knowledge, skills, and attitude about TLRs. Considering the key concepts, I have written down my reflections on these. For knowledge, I know that learning resources are the learning materials that help me deliver my lessons effectively. For skills naman, I do prepare learning materials that are appropriate to my lessons. And for attitude, I feel that lessons are best mastered and remembered when learning materials are used. Now, it's your turn to reflect on this indicator. To save time, let me continue my discussion while you are accomplishing your self-reflection. Then I am asking you to post your answers in the chat box when you are done. As a teacher, one of our basic tasks is to prepare the lesson exemplars targeting the competencies based on the MELC's budget of work and curriculum guide. Here are some of the common findings I have with my mentees based on their submitted lesson exemplars. First, the learning goals or objectives are stated. Second, the teachers were able to select and organize the learning resources that they will be using for the day. Another one is that teachers use various types of learning materials to help meet the competency of the lesson. So that's generally good. However, when you are crafting your own lesson exemplar, I suggest that you consider the following questions, for these are also the questions that your mentors might ask from you. 1. How will you describe the types of teaching and learning resources used to help learners achieve competency? 2. How did the teaching and learning resources help the learners demonstrate content knowledge? 3. Did the teaching and learning resources lead to the learners' demonstration of what they need to learn and how they learn it? Kanyang i-elaborate. 4. How did you employ the process of selecting the teaching and learning resources? 5. Did you find the developed teaching and learning resources useful in the teaching and learning process? 6. What can you say about the way the teaching and learning resources were organized in the lesson, stated in the lesson plan? 7. How did you help the learners meet their learning goals through the utilization of teaching and learning resources? After you consider all these suggestions, and still your mentor has additional suggestions for you, you may also consider that to improve your practice. For a more concrete example, let us analyze this scenario. Teacher Mark needs to teach his learners the lesson on recount. He ensures that the learners will fully understand the processes on how to write interesting recounts using varied sentence structures. In his compilation of instructional materials, or IMs, he finds some related materials, pictures, and charts. He also searches the Learning Resource Management and Development System, or LRMDS portal, for additional appropriate teaching and learning resources. Considering his learning goals and the nature of his learners, he finally thinks that interactive materials from the portal will greatly aid him in instruction. In the earlier cited situation, Teacher Mark includes in his selection process the existing materials. With an array of available teaching materials, his decision is primarily based on the nature of his learners. Here, the selection of appropriate teaching and learning resources, or TLRs, plays an important role in curriculum delivery. These TLRs set the foundation for developing deeper engagement of learners that will facilitate the completion of knowledge and skills. You may also consider the following guidelines in selecting appropriate teaching and learning resources, or guidelines and processes for LRMDS assessment and evaluation. Categorically, we have 3 types of resources. We have the print, the charts, posters, flashcards, and manipulatives, and then the non-print materials. Here are the example of print materials. We have workbooks, dictionaries, encyclopedias, newspapers, magazines, handouts, wordless books, flyers, reference books, maps, laboratory manuals, syllabi, brochures, pamphlets, and show-me boards. In the utilization of the following print materials, you may consider the following key questions. 1. Is the material suitable for the learner's development needs? 2. Does the material cover the content? 3. Does the material promote higher cognitive skills such as critical thinking, creating, learning by doing, inquiry, and problem solving? Is the material free from ideology, cultural, and gender biases? Does the material reflect the values and traits of being a Filipino? Does the material address the interests of the learners? Is the material free from any kinds of error? Does the material address the learning goal? For the second type of resources, we have charts, posters, flashcards, and manipulatives. Examples, so as stated now, we have charts, posters, flashcards, we have diorama boxes, finger puppets, movie roll boxes, TV roll boxes, origami dioramas, gardening tools, anatomy models. Here are the key questions that you may consider in using these types of resources. First, are the presented facts accurate? Second, are visuals clear and adequate? 3. Are the materials age appropriate? 4. Does the material serve its purpose? 5. Is the material durable? 6. Is the material free from any kind of error? 7. Does the material address the learning goal? Now, here are the guidelines for using non-print resources. Examples are CD-ROM, VCD, DVD, slide deck presentation, transparencies, TV, and digital interactive. These are the key questions you may consider in using these types of resources. 1. Is the material consistent with the content of the DepEd learning competencies? 2. Is the content accurate? 3. Is the learning material logically developed and organized? 4. Is the material relevant to real-life situations? 5. Is the language appropriate? 6. Is the material free from any kinds of error? And lastly, do the materials support values formation? Now that we are done and guided with how the learning materials were selected and how the learning goals were considered, we are ready to move forward to organizing and using our TLRs in our lessons. However, when there are no available appropriate TLRs, we are encouraged to develop them. Let us consider this second scenario on the illustration of practice for developing and organizing appropriate teaching and learning resources. Teacher Faye is preparing her learners for a listening activity. She is looking for a literary piece from Anglo-American literature which will enable her learners to infer thoughts, feelings, and intentions in the material viewed. Analyze literature as a means of discovering the self, distinguish between and among informative journalistic and literary writing, and use the appropriate segmentals or sound of English and the supra-segmentals or prosodic features of speech when delivering lines of poetry and prose such as speech choir, jazz chants, and raps. She is able to find a suitable resource in YouTube. However, she intends to maximize the existing material in targeting the development of other skills. She is challenged to develop her own learning material, which will integrate 4 domains in one lesson presentation. Based on the situation, What things did Teacher Faye consider in developing unavailable TLRs? These are the questions to ponder. 1. Is there a need to develop a new TLR? 2. What is my target goal? 3. What type of TLR should I develop? 4. Are there localized and/or indigenized materials to be used? 5. What material should I use in the development of the material? 6. Are the materials to be used in the development of the TLR available? 7. When do I start planning and developing the new resources? 8. Should I pretest the developed resources? And last, how should I use the developed materials? Remember, locally crafted TLRs substitute expensive ones which are not readily available. Our ability to localize or indigenize materials makes us adaptable to our classroom situation. It is encouraged that we develop localized and indigenized materials that are aligned with the learning goals. The wise, logical, and appropriate selection, development, and organization of the teaching and learning resources contribute to its effective use in the classroom. This does not only address the learning goals, but also engages the learners in a meaningful experiential learning. Now that the TLRs are appropriately selected, developed, and organized, we are ready to use them to make learning more engaging and interesting to our learners. Join me in our quest of ensuring the appropriate use of the TLRs as we go to the next illustration of practice. As proficient teachers, you may opt to consider the following various ways to appropriately use teaching and learning resources for each of the subject learning areas. Let me present to you the various learning resources in teaching math. So mostly, we use manipulatives in teaching math concepts. So here are some of those manipulatives. The first is the counters. So what is the counters for? So counters are used to teach one-on-one correspondence, ordinal numbers, and basic addition and subtraction. Another manipulative is the counting cubes. These are used to solve simple addition and subtraction equations. Another manipulative is the fraction strips. These are used to represent different fractional concepts and relationships. We also have pattern blocks. These are used to assist learners in learning basic algebra. It is also used to assist learners in classifying and patterning tasks. Another manipulative is the base 10 blocks. These are used to represent and perform operations on multi-digit numbers. Then we also have the geoboards, which are used to identify simple geometric shapes. Another is the geometrical solid models, which are used to learn about spatial reasoning. We also have standard and non-standard rulers and measuring cups, which are used to represent length or volume in measurement lessons. These are the tiles, which are used to calculate the area or perimeter of an object. There are also spinners, which are used to find the probability of landing on a designated area. And lastly, we have the dice to find the probability of rolling a certain number or combination of numbers. While manipulatives are usually very effective, their use does not sufficiently guarantee meaningful learning. Teachers must ensure that they are used in the context of the educational tasks to actively engage learners' thinking with the guidance of the teacher. This ensures that the use of manipulatives will lead to the ultimate goal of learning math, which is to do math without them. To further illustrate, let us consider the following scenario of Teacher Zachary, another math teacher, in his use of the manipulatives. Teacher Zachary teaches his class the lesson on fractions. He provides them with a lot of manipulatives such as counting sticks, geoboards, dice, and solid blocks. He explains the activity and asks his grade 6 learners to use manipulatives to explore and familiarize concepts about fractions. Before the end of the lesson, he gives a 5-item quiz, and to his surprise, none of the learners answered them correctly. What could be the problem in this scenario? Actually, there is no problem with the use of manipulatives in the activity or in any mathematics or mathematics-related subjects. However, Teacher Zachary did not identify first the specific learning goal or goals. Hence, he wasn't able to identify the objectives for using the manipulatives. Manipulatives can be extremely helpful or not helpful at all to our learners. Our learners must understand the mathematical concept being taught rather than simply moving the manipulatives around. The manipulatives should be appropriate for the learners and should be chosen to meet the specific goals and objectives of the mathematical program. Let us continue. This time, allow me to present to you the various instructional materials used in teaching science. So we have the charts, posters, and bulletin boards. What are these used for? So we can use these materials if your purpose is to attract attention, arouse interest of the learners, reinforce and add dimension, and also provide concrete meaning to abstract ideas. However, the use of these instructional materials have their particular advantages and disadvantages. Among the advantages of using them, they are inexpensive, no equipment needed, they are easy to use and store, and most likely they are readily available. Disadvantages, however, include limited to 2 dimensions and most likely they have no motion. Another instructional material that can be of use in teaching science is the overhead transparencies commonly used for graphic presentations. The disadvantages of using these include inexpensive software, availability, and size. Disadvantages include impermanent, since the content can be removed in time and require less common equipment. Then we also have handouts that are used for important information, maybe through or as a quiz, as a guide, and as a reminder. Then handouts can be of use to emphasize a point or for a complete and comprehensive explanation of the lesson. Advantages of using handouts can be prepared in advance or can be retained for future reference and review. However, the disadvantage stated here is that some learners do not like to read handouts. We also have audio tapes, compact discs or CD used for audio. So for purposes, we can use this for music fitness or in order to create a mood for your lesson. Advantages: ease of production of tapes and low cost or accessible. Disadvantage include because portable player is bulkier and heavier than other equipment like MP3 player. Next, we have videotapes, films, CD visual, or DVDs. These are of many uses. So, whenever you're planning to use them, you may consider the following. For evaluation of learner performance, for self-evaluation of learner or teacher, this can be used to magnify the small objects. Then, learners can make their own videos. These stimulate verbal communication and creativity, present meaning involving motion, compel attention, heighten reality, and promote understanding of abstract concepts. So, these are the advantages naman of using videotapes, films, CD visuals, and DVDs. For instant replay, then can be saved for future use. Inexpensive din siya, portable. You can have ease of operation, and then can be interfaced with a computer for individualized instruction. Despite the many uses and advantages, still, there are disadvantages on the use of the following IMs. Some are that they require equipment such as portable players and other audio-visual devices. Then, they may not guarantee learning, thus they need to be supplemented by other teaching methods. Another IM that you may opt to use in teaching science is the computers, which are commonly used for computer-aided instruction or computer-assisted instruction, for record keeping, and for word processing. Advantage of using these: they are of high interest and, of course, fast. Then disadvantages: the equipment offer limited to computer lab or resource centers. And for the sake of our blended teachers, of course, there are only limited number of children who can avail or afford to have in their particular homes computers. Then we also have illustrated lecture with computer or slide projector as another instructional material that can be of use. The purpose is for enhancement of concepts. And then the advantages of using these include inexpensive software, and then can be combined with audio. However, the disadvantage is that it requires darkened room. We also have another IM, which is the magnetic boards, which are used for strategy talks. Advantages of using these include easy to use, attention getting, and less hazardous, especially for the consideration of asthmatic children. And then disadvantages is that these are more expensive than chalkboard and not available in all the stores. Now we're down to the last IM that can be used in teaching science. We have the real objects or objects and displays. These are usually used to exemplify a real-life situation. What is the advantage of using these? These are of high reality because these are three-dimensional. And the disadvantage, sometimes, with respect to the displays, they are very expensive. However, they are not engaging for some learners. So, the appropriate choice of learning resources, including ICT, can contribute to the teacher's effectiveness in instruction, particularly in science concepts. Okay, this time let's discuss the instructional materials for the language teachers. So here are the IMs that can be used in teaching English, Filipino, or mother tongue. So the first one we have here is the audiobooks. So as you can see in the illustration, this is kind of an application. Okay, what is the use of using the audiobooks? So this can be used to improve the learner's listening comprehension and vocabulary. Another IM that can be used in teaching language, we have dictionaries. This is commonly used already. So what are the uses of using dictionaries? We have bilingual dictionaries, which are useful for beginners and intermediate learners. So yung English-Tagalog and Tagalog-English dictionaries. Then we also have the monolingual dictionaries, useful for advanced learners. Okay, so yung exact translation lang siya from English to English, then Filipino to Filipino. We also have the pocket dictionaries, the smaller ones, which are very easy to carry and good for quick reference, so portable. And then we also have the electronic dictionaries, portable din to, and easy and quick to search on. Then we also have videotapes. Videotapes are used to enhance the listening experience of the learners. Then provide important visual stimulus for language production as observed in the setting, action, emotions, and gestures. Nakuha ko dyan na example ng videotapes yung sa Baby Einstein. Okay, moving on, we also have recording devices such as tape recorders or video cameras that can be used to record conversations, radio programs, songs, classes, and lectures and help the learners improve listening comprehension. Now let's have the computer software. So this IM can be used because some computer programs are designed to accelerate language acquisition. Then this supplements the core language program used in the classroom. We also have the commonly used flashcards, useful for learning vocabulary and grammar. This can be used to write words, phrases, or sentences on one of the sides of the flashcards. And the meaning or definition or translation can be written on the other side. Then we also have the chart, which is useful in learning sounds, words, and connected speech. Apart from the charts, we can also use pictures in order to improve the learner's understanding of language through pictures of objects, people, animals, plants, and others. Lastly, we have the newspaper and magazine. These are used because these bring real-life situation to learners and used to enhance skills in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. The following IMs can be used to reflect the culture of a certain community through the language they contain. Hopefully, with the wide range of available materials presented, take into consideration that it is important for a language teacher to know what kind of resources to use and when to use them for the specific language lesson and which materials are best suited to the different ability levels of our learners. This time, let me show you some illustrations of the instructional resources which can be used as auxiliary tools in text, visual, or audio media, both in print and in digital format in Araling Panlipunan. So we have the maps, charts, pamphlets, globes, posters, graphics, photographs, models, slogans, guide cards, bulletin boards, and worksheets. We can also consider the use of computer, PowerPoint slide decks, projectors, videos, films, effective in teaching Araling Panlipunan. Okay, moving on. We have known that every teacher needs instructional materials that best suit the method and strategy that could fully develop the technical skills of learners. Now, to assure meaningful and effective edukasyong pantahanan at pangkabuhayan, or EPP, or Technology and Livelihood Education, or TLE instruction, the teacher should identify proper tools and equipment to use. So remember that the following must be considered in identifying tools to use in EPP or TLE. 1. Variety of tools appropriate for different content areas. 2. Availability of tools in each subject area. 3. Availability of raw materials to be used. 4. Adequate number of tools to be used by the learners. And then adequate classroom or laboratory workspace. Allow me to continue, but this time on the appropriate learning resources to be used in teaching TLE. Let me show you first the appropriate instructional materials in teaching home economics. So we can make use of pictures and images of tools that are not available. You can also make use of videos, PowerPoint slide decks, and projectors. However, it is best if the following real materials are available. Like for sewing or garment materials, we have hand sewing needles, rotary cutter, scissors, machine needles, pin cushion, pinking shears or scissors, safety pins, flat iron, thread, marking pencil, seam ripper, and tape measure. We can also make use of the following cooking utensils. We have the knife, chopping board, tweezers, ladle, vegetable peeler, frying pan, and cooking pot. This time, let me show you the different instructional materials in teaching agriculture. So we can make use also of pictures and images for tools that are not available. However, simple tools like the ones that follow could be of effective use. We have shovel, axe, bolo, pick, crowbar, pitchforks, insecticides. Just be careful of the use of these chemicals. Cutlass. We have hose, spades, and wheelbarrow hoe. Then here are the instructional materials in teaching industrial arts, including the hand tools. We have pliers, hammers, screwdrivers, saw, including rip saw, crosscut saw, and keyhole saw. We have the push-pull rule, nails, adhesive tapes, cutter, and pairs of compasses. For teaching ICT, we also have computer-aided materials, PowerPoint slide decks. Of course, we have the computers that can be of desktop computer or laptop computer. We also have tablets and, of course, the video lessons or the videos itself. So, we're done with the different instructional materials in teaching TLE. However, the use of appropriate learning resources in music and arts is equally important as those earlier mentioned. The use of recorded teaching materials in the classroom has proven to improve music performance. Specific and actual musical instruments may also be considered in teaching music. So here are the instructional materials in teaching music. So we have for brass instrument, we have trumpet and trombone. For percussion instruments, we have drums, maracas, bell, cymbals, tambourine, and xylophone. For string instruments, we have guitar, violin, ukulele, and harp. For woodwind instruments, we have flute and piccolo. For miscellaneous instruments, we have harmonica and keyboard. For the arts, the use of tangible materials in the classroom is significant. So for the instructional materials in teaching arts, particularly in graphics, we have charts, graphs, posters, and diagrams. Now for the prints, we have worksheets or handouts and programmed materials. When it comes to three-dimensional objects and models, we have clays and blocks. Physical education or PE has a wide range of materials and technology to use to enhance and supplement PE instruction. The use of instructional materials has become a major instructional platform to facilitate cognition and skill performance. Here are the materials and equipment in teaching physical education, particularly in educational games. We have playground balls. Then we have also balls for striking. There are beach balls, yarn balls, balloons, flying discs, deck rings, plastic bottle butts, tennis rackets, sticks with styrofoam, standard nets, cones or jog markers, spot markers, basketballs, adjustable basketball, goals, soccer balls, and parachute. Now here are the materials and equipment in teaching educational dance. We have plastic hoops, styrofoam hoops holders, rhythmic equipment, including ankle wrist bells, rain stick, rap stick, drum with mallet, and lumi sticks. We also have stretchy materials, band nylon scarves, jump bands. You can also make use of CD or tape player, cordless microphone, and sound system. For teaching educational gymnastics, we can make use of the following materials and equipment: foam vaulting, trapezoid styrofoam, shapes like circles, triangles, ovals, and wedge. We have mats, landing mats, inclined mats, balance beams, benches, balance boards, jumping boxes, shapes of varying heights, connecting ladder, hanging ropes, and jump ropes. Now for physical fitness assessment, we have sit and reach box for measuring flexibility, stop watches, skin fold calipers, modified chin-up bar and standards, and we can also have fitness assessment package. So we're done with the different teaching and learning resources that can be used in the different learning areas. So having seen that indicator 4.5.2 can be targeted and attained, I am very much sure that you are now ready to incorporate in your lesson or lesson exemplars the appropriate selection, development, organization, and utilization of the teaching and learning resources, including ICT, in order to address the learning goals. This time, let me present to you the different illustrations of practice that you may also consider in making your teaching practices aligned to this indicator. So starting off with number 1, teaching and learning resources to address the learning goals. So first, the teacher strategically selects from a huge array and wide variety of teaching and learning resources consistently aligned to the learning goals. He or she picks teaching and learning materials that help the learner understand the key concepts or key skills. For instance, the teacher is teaching independent reading. Part of the process is the learner's understanding of the unfamiliar words. The teacher encourages the learners to use a handy dictionary or offline dictionary installed in an Android phone to look for word meanings. Second, the teacher considers the diversity of the learners in the development of the teaching and learning materials. He or she sees to it that the materials can be crafted or to be crafted may be basic or supplementary to the curriculum. Third, the teacher utilizes learning resources which are consistently aligned with the learning goals. He or she aligns all instructional materials to the instructional purposes. So that is our objectives. Fourth, the teacher modifies activities and materials found in the learner's materials and teacher's guide, if any, to suit the learning needs and interests of the learners. He or she further looks for the need of developing new teaching and learning materials to appropriately suit the learning goals to ensure learners' active participation. Fifth, the teacher also considers the level of learners' development and readiness. He or she selects existing teaching and learning resources that are appropriate, individual appropriate, and cultural and social context appropriate. For instance, vocabulary level and difficulty of concepts should be considered. Sixth, the teacher sees to it that he or she uses the variety of educational technology tools, auditory aids, visual aids, audio-visual aids, and activity aids. For instance, Manila paper, chalkboards, charts, diagrams, books, magazines, projectors, TV, video clips, flip charts, markers, handouts, worksheets, activity sheets, modules, strategic intervention materials or SIMs, meta cards, pictures, learning strips or learning trips, task cards, observation notebook, journal, globes, calculator, maps, blocks, number charts, sticks, stones, and other manipulatives. And last, the teacher considers the time element relative to the use of the teaching and learning resources, ensuring that materials are not used to consume the entire teaching and learning contact time. This time, let me present to you the illustrations of practice considering the inclusion of ICT. 1. The teacher considers the Learning Resource Management and Development System or LRMDS portal of the Department of Education, which are used across curriculum areas. For instance, the teacher looks for a teaching material to be used to teach how to write a recount in English grade. In the LRMDS portal, the teacher found one material entitled Here Boy, a show and tell online illustrations on how to write a recount. So, number 2, The teacher prepares ICT-aided instruction, if available, aligned to the learning goals, considering the learner's development, interest, and readiness. For instance, the use of Android phones, tablets, and interactive whiteboards which direct learners to interact face-to-face with the technology. So the teacher utilizes online platform to download related materials aligned to learning goals. Another instance, a science teacher would like to show the vast relationship of the celestial bodies and the solar system. Instead of using just pictorial presentations, she looks for a video snapshot presentation of the universe in YouTube to catch the attention of the learners. Number 3, the teacher modifies ICT-based instruction if needed, aligned to the learning goals. For instance, the use of social networking platforms, learners' manipulation and presentation of output through a software. So that's the end of my discussion. Before I formally end, I want to leave you this quotation by Anton Chekhov. Knowledge is of no value unless you put it into practice. So I hope whatever you've learned or gained in my discussion, you are going to put it into practice, especially that we will be holding our classroom observations on the coming months. So that's all. Thank you everyone for listening and bearing with me. God bless us all.